So here we are up in the first attic, and this is the attic that's above our bedrooms. And right away, the first thing that I notice is here at the rafters. Um, these are, I'm guessing they're 2x6. Yeah, they're 2x6 boards, but you notice the insulation doesn't even come up to the top of the boards. So the 2x6, that's 5.5 inches of insulation. And well, it's not even that. It's closer to, like, 4 inches of insulation, if that. And here in Ohio, that's just not enough insulation. We should have like 12 to 15 inches up here. And so this is one of the reasons that our house is so cold. Now, the other thing that I did notice kind of right off the bat is the color of the insulation. This is obviously very, very old insulation. It's got a dark layer of dust all over it, and when you move it aside, you'll see the color that it should be. This gray color. This is cellulose insulation, basically ground up paper that's treated with an anti-fire retardant. So there's a lot of dust up here. The other thing that I notice is all over the place, I'm seeing dead wasp. I mean, hundreds of them. They're all over the attic. So obviously either down there on that end where the screen is, or on that end, there's probably some tears in the screen, or the holes are big enough to allow wasps to come in and out. I definitely wouldn't want to be up here in the summertime battling those guys. It is late December now, and this is actually the perfect time to be up here. It's nice and comfortable, not too cold, not too hot. But then the other thing that I notice is the previous owner of the house probably didn't know a whole lot about how attics are supposed to operate, or how the airflow is supposed to take place in an attic. You can see down here, that is the soffit ends, and normally you want to have the soffits cleared because the air vents in the soffit want to allow air to come up into the attic and keep the roof cool. And without that ventilation, you're going to have hot spots and cold spots all over your house due to improper airflow. It can also cause a lot of moisture to occur up here. And it looks like they took bat insulation in addition to the cellulose insulation that was spread out. And they took those bats and they ran those all the way out to the soffits out there. And that's going to block the airflow. That's just not good. So the first thing that I'm going to have to do is, before I can blow in some new insulation and get it up to where that it really should be, is I went and picked up some of these things right here. These are air baffles, and what you do with those is I'll have to go out and pull that bat insulation. I'm going to have to crawl on my belly to get out there, and it's going to be a tight fit, but I'm going to have to pull that bat insulation out of there and then install these baffles. And what they do is they just fit up between the rafters, and some spots are higher, some spots are lower, but it allows a channel of air to come up from the eaves or from the soffit down there. The air should flow against the roof. And then there's a part down here on the end that folds downward. And that way, when we go to blow in the insulation, the part that's folded will keep the new blown in insulation from falling into that part where the soffit vents are. So it's going to take a little bit of work, but to do it right, that's going to have to be done before I come in and blow in insulation. Then after I blow in the insulation, I'm going to have to check those screens and see what we can do to keep the bugs and the wasp out of here. But it's going to be a dirty job. It's going to be a dusty job. Well, it's got to be done. So this is only one of 2 attics, and actually the other attic is bigger than this one, and I've noticed it's pretty much the same way. So yeah, here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, here we are after the first little marathon of installing these baffles. I know it's kind of dark over there, you can't see, but I started right here in the middle of my attic, and I did take care of all of that one side. And so that's about 25% of the work done. And something I should have mentioned earlier, before you start a project like that, I pointed out how dark the dust is and everything. But one thing you'll definitely need before you do this work is get yourself a good N95 mask, or a couple of them. That way you can change them out, because when you're crawling around on your belly and you are breathing hard and sucking a lot of this is fiberglass insulation I'm pulling out, so you don't want to breathe any of those fibers or any of this cellulose or even the dust that's around here. So you'll be breathing pretty heavy when you do this work. So definitely a mask. You'll also want to get one of those one-piece jumpsuits. I almost slipped off the rafter that I'm kind of teetering on. You'll want to get one of those painter suits. It's an all-in-one, kind of like a jumpsuit that painters wear. It's just a material that this cellulose doesn't stick to as well as your clothes. And so if you're up here, and first of all, it's January now, and it's still hot. Today is about 60 degrees outside. It's unusually warm for Ohio in December. So it's kind of hot up here, and so I'm sweating, and if my clothes are wet in contact with this cellulose insulation, it's going to stick all over me. The jumpsuit does make it a little bit hotter, but the stuff isn't sticking to the jumpsuit, so I'm not dragging it around all over the attic, or when I go down to cool off, I'm not bringing it into my house. But this is all of that fiberglass insulation that was tucked back in the soffits that I pulled out. So I'll probably repurpose that, take it outside, shake it off, and repurpose it either up here or above my garage attic or crawl space. But about 25% of the work is done, and that's kind of what it looks like. We'll talk a little bit more about what I'm learning with these baffles, but with the first one installed, I'm not sure how much I can zoom in down there, but you can see it's got just a little bit of an air vent, so the air is able to travel along the rafter up out of the soffit and travel right along this roof line, but it limits it so not too much air would be coming up here. And so that's the whole purpose of that, in addition to, since it folds down, that'll keep the blown-in insulation from going back and entering into the soffit area and causing a clog and moisture. But let's talk a little bit about the baffles. I'm going to climb down out of here where I've got a little more light. So this is what the baffle looks like before it's installed. And I picked these up at the local Menards store, but I think you can get them at pretty much any big box home improvement center. The one that I'm using are called Durovent Baffle, and you see it has the number 16/24. So this particular one is made to go, the way that it sits is it's 24 inches wide, or designed to fit in a 24-inch on center attic, or where the rafters are spaced 24 inches apart. But this one, the 16, means that it does have a cut line right here. So what you can do is just cut that, and then you can use one side of it in your attic if you're 16 inches on center. And my attic rafters are 16 inches on center, so I'm having to cut that. And I found just a heavy pair of scissors works best. This stuff is kind of a rigid foam. It's a very thin rigid foam. I tried cutting it with a razor knife, but it kept tearing. So scissors is what I found works best. But these are the lines that you fold. Fold it once here and then fold it again right here to create that cove at the bottom that holds the insulation back. And it has kind of an indentation here, and the back side of this indentation sits on the plywood roof deck. And I've got two of them here, and then you just hit a staple a couple of places along the length of that, and so that creates a channel right here that the air rides up along the roof, the attic roof. Now, one of the things that I don't really like about this particular design is when you do cut that there, you end up with an 8-inch piece that's waste material. And I'm trying to figure out a way. I think that if I take the waste from 2 baffles, I should be able to put them together and have 16 inches to use as fillers, and that way I'm not wasting anything. Now, the only downside is this part that rides along the side of the rafter. It's not going to be on both ends like it would be here, and actually it's only on one end. By the time you cut the waste material off, you've only got that on one side, which is what I'm experiencing. But if I tape them together, I'm probably going to have to cut this piece off to give me a flat surface to mount that to. And otherwise, I'm going to have a piece sticking up in the middle that's going to be in the way. So I'm going to have to figure out some way to make this work, but I'll figure something out and I'll put it somewhere in this video as well. But yeah, that's what the baffle material looks like. Okay, here we are, halfway done. Got one complete side of the attic all done. After I installed those baffles that I showed you before, I installed this radiant barrier material, and it goes down to the start of the soffit and then curls around underneath. And so that while the soffit keeps the soffit baffle keeps the insulation from going back far into the soffit, this material kind of does the same thing. I don't know if I really needed the baffle since I was going to put this up, but it never hurts to have an extra layer of prevention. But what this material does is it acts as a radiant barrier. So the sun rays that are coming down onto the roof material are bounced back so they don't enter the attic space. It does the same thing inside the house. The heat coming up through the insulation, what it's going to do is it's going to bounce back and hold that into the house. Now, you can't just use any material for this. It is a specially designed material. You can see that it has tiny perforations throughout it, and that's to allow airflow. It does have to breathe, and what you do is it directs that airflow the same as the baffles, but it carries it further up into the top of the attic. And I didn't go all the way up. I did leave a space, about 1 foot space, and what happens is as the heat rises, or as the cool air rises, it does give an extra area right here so that the heat in the attic can still rise up through the ridge vent that's at the peak. So one complete side of the attic is done, and that is a lot of crawling around on my belly. I did reuse some of that old bat material. What I did was, after I curled that radiant barrier, and it is stapled up just to the rafters. What I did was I just tucked that insulation there just to help any air, any cold air from coming back from the rafters into the attic. That's a lot of work, a lot of crawling around. This is a job that if you're a very large person or not very flexible, you're probably going to have a hard time doing. But one side down, and now to begin the other side, and then I do still have that second attic. Here's that material. This is the radiant barrier, and you can see it's just a thin mylar material, reflective on both sides, and it has just a lot of tiny perforations throughout it. I guess this would also act because it's mylar, and it is waterproof. It's very durable. You can't tear it, you have to cut it. But that would also help out if, I guess, if you ever did have any type of a leaky roof, any water dripping down through the roof would kind of go down, and it would limit any damage to just the soffit area instead of coming into your house and causing any ceiling or drywall damage down below. At least that's what I've been told. Well, let me get started on the other side now. Well, here's another problem that I found up in the attic. Looks like the people that lived here before, or maybe this was done when the house was initially built, but it looks like what they did, so that right there is a bathroom exhaust fan, and over there is another one. And what they did was, it looks like they just took some flexible pipe and they ran it over across, and instead of exiting through either the soffit or the roof, what they did, they just have the hose stuck up there, hung with a piece of wire over next to the gable venting over on the side. And well, I guess it's okay if you get a lot of airflow through the attic. This is a source of moisture that is put directly into the attic where you don't want moisture. And I'm seeing, like you can see it on this board right here, you see how the top half of the board is a light color, but the bottom half of the board is a darker color. And I think that that darker color is due to the extra moisture that's over in this part of the attic. I'm not seeing that over on this side of the attic, but I'm seeing it on quite a few boards over on this side where these tubes are. Now, the other thing that can happen, since these are flexible tubes, if you really get a lot of moisture up here vented out of the bathrooms, because there's low spots in this, that can actually be a place where the moisture can run back down and actually pull and collect into those low spots in this tube. And if the tube gets perforated or punctured in any way, now you're going to have, like a gallon of water in either of these low spots that are going to come right down through your drywall. Now we're over at the area where these two vent pipes exhaust, and you can see inside of those pipes. See, this is where the real damage can come in. With the moisture that's in there, that's mold. That's from all the moisture that's blown out of the bathrooms into the attic. And I can see up in the rafter area, that's directly related to where all this moisture is coming out of these pipes and being directed. So we're gonna have to do something to treat that. I know that I've seen some people do it with a hydrogen peroxide solution or a bleach solution, but I think I'm gonna have to get a spray bottle and do what I can to any mold that might still be active or growing. You don't want to rub it or anything because it can release those spores into the air and it's bad stuff to breathe in. But I'm definitely going to have to get rid of these and install some true roof vents. The other thing about this, instead of having this flexible tube, these should be insulated because you've got warm air rising up in a column through this, but you've got cold air in the attic, and that's going to cause condensation right away. Where if these were insulated, it's going to maintain temperature until it exits either the roof or the soffit. But this is a problem that definitely needs to be taken care of before I blow new insulation in up here.